Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Friday, January 17th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through that worksheet process, and if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you, help you get the maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, and or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a comment or a question or a testimonial from you, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. Greatly appreciate whenever anybody does that, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work, as I like to say it. And the intention we have with this work is to be a service, and that is just so much easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. If you're listening live and you would like to type in a comment or raise a hand to talk to us directly, you'll need to download the Needle app. Go to your app store and type in NEDL and look for the Needle AI assisted radio station app, and when you load that up and give them your phone number and email, it will allow you to type a comment in or tap the phone icon, the phone receiver icon, and with luck, I'll be able to see that you're there, and we'll turn on the microphone and have a conversation. And I greatly appreciate when that happens. It dramatically increases the probability that the conversation we have on the internet show will be one that people will say, wow, that should be a special, that should be a best of, that should be a highlight show. The vast majority of those over the last 14 years have been the product of people just like you calling and asking a question or making a comment or even actively refuting something that we're talking about. We are very much interested in living in the question and learning from each other and, as the old adage goes, walking each other home. This morning in my morning routine, I was listening to some Pema Chodron from her book, Start Where You Are, and I got the strong urge to download the Kindle version of that book. I'm listening to it on Audible, and I listen to it once or twice a year, as with several of her books. And the reason I wanted to download the Kindle, I didn't do it, but the way she talks about giving up knowing, putting down the beliefs, living in the question, actively questioning things was so similar to what we hear in the way of mastery and what we get from, the writings of Rilke, the poet, and what we understand in terms of many of the deep spiritual schools. When I choose to know something intellectually, and I label something as something I know, this is my belief, I live by this, what we understand from people who've studied brain activity is in those periods of time where I focus on what I think I know and what my belief is, my brain activity is at a minimum. When I'm living in a question, my brain activity is heightened. My senses are awake and aware. I'm taking in new things. There's the potential for me to learn. And if I go, what I've said for years now is, if I go into a situation thinking that I know what I need to know, I know how I learned it and when I learned it, and that's a done deal, I'm going to leave that situation knowing what I knew. There's no potential for me to learn something new when I go in believing something or believing I know everything there is to know. In order for me to learn something new, I have to have two conditions. One of them is I have to have an observation. It's fairly easy for most of us to make if we're the least bit honest. The first observation I make is, I don't know everything. There are things about quantum mechanics I don't know. There are things about gourmet cooking I don't know. There are things about even my favorite hobbies that I don't know. So I don't know everything. And I just walk into a situation in the observation that I don't know everything. So I'm observing. The second observation is, based on the first one, if I don't know everything, then whatever it is I think I know is at best only partially true, and perhaps even completely false. And if I'm willing to go into a situation in observing mode with those two observations active, now there's a potential for me to learn it's limitless. It goes on and on and on. And most of the smartest people I know will actively talk about how the more they learn, the more they realize how little they actually know, how much more there is to learn and to experience and to grow into. So that really got me this morning, the way that Pema Chodron was talking almost verbatim, the way of mastery talks to us about how we've got this divine ignorance. We've got to be willing to understand how little we actually know and be living in the question in order for us to expand, in order for us to be able to interact directly and fully with the life in front of us. And if we're willing to do that, options amplify exponentially. When we think we know something and we want to argue or fight for it or hold on to our beliefs, no learning is possible. So, please let us know your thoughts on this. Download the Needle app, N-E-D-L, and it's the AI radio tuner in your app store. And once you sign in, it gives you the option to either type in a comment or raise a hand to be put in the phone queue. I just earlier this morning did an interview with Beatrice Birch, who is the founder and one of the primary facilitators at Inner Fire in Vermont. And Inner Fire in Vermont is a facility that helps people move through mental health challenges with little or no meds, and or helps them taper off of their meds if that's what they choose to do. And it's in Vermont, it's out in nature. It is a very active program where they do all kinds of skill building and art therapy and active things like chopping wood and learning to take care of themselves and food preparation. So they have a healthy diet in terms of the food they put into their body. They've got skill building and information. They've got a social integrated approach, and they're going to finish their 10th year this September. And Beatrice was kind enough to let me interview her back on April 7th of 2020, again on March 1st of 2022, and then again this morning. And the exciting thing for me is that now at the 10-year mark, they're going for accreditation, so they will be able to train other prescribers on how to help people who are on these psychotropic medications and they're not getting the results they want, and they're tired of living numbed out and suppressed in a zombie-like state. And the trick with that is that it is not a good thing. It's certainly not an easy thing to get off of these meds. It's not a good thing to get off of them quickly. It is, as many people who've been at this and studying it understand, the closer you get to being off the med, the more slowly you need to go to avoid what people would call relapse or exacerbation of the withdrawal symptoms, etc. And one of the big difficulties with that is that so many prescribers will interpret the withdrawal symptoms as an indication that the psychopathology that they've labeled is coming back, and so the person needs more meds, or they need more and different meds. And it is rarely, if ever, the case that that's what's happening. Most of the time what's happening is the person's body and brain chemistry is going through withdrawal and going through the adjustment of trying to function without that heavy-duty suppression of the senses and the rational centers of the brain, etc. And for a really good book on that, you can read Brooke Siem's book, S-I-E-M is her name, and her book is titled May Cause Side Effects. And she was a very bright 30-something who had been on psychotropic meds since her father died when she was age 15, and her mother got scared about one of the reactions that Brooke had to losing her father very abruptly. And her mother put her in a psychiatric hospital where they forced her on medication, and for the next 15 years she was on multiple medications. And in her early 30s, she was suicidal and thinking about throwing herself out the window when she finally said, wait a minute, what about all those meds that are in my medicine cabinet that I take every day? What would happen if I went off of those? Would I still be suicidal? So she got lucky. She was creative and bright enough and self-motivated enough to go to her psychiatrist and say, I want to get off these meds. And the psychiatrist said, as expected, I don't advise it. And she was strong, and she said, yes, I want to get off. And the psychiatrist said, okay, well, just go ahead, and gave her almost no good advice about how to get off of these slowly and taper off, etc. And so Brooke ended up writing a book about the torturous process over that next year plus. And I highly recommend it. There's also an interview that Brooke allowed me to do with her a couple of years ago that's on Journey's Dream on the On Your Mind podcast. And you can access that for about, less than an hour conversation, and then you can make a decision if you want to get her book, or you might want to recommend the book to somebody else. Another resource for that kind of thing is the website madinamerica.com. And Robert Whitaker, who's created that website and who's the driving force behind that, is an investigative journalist who addresses this issue actively, the issue of the overprescription of medications and the problem with how when people believe that these medications are a cure for a mental illness, then what they do is they just keep giving the medications, even though to more and more people in higher and higher numbers. And instead of being a cure for mental illness or mental health troubles, more and more people are filing for mental health disability the more we prescribe these meds. And it is an unhealthy, out-of-control system, and I'm just thrilled that people who are working in that field and working to change it to something healthier are agreeing to be interviewed for the On Your Mind podcast. So hopefully this is sparking some thoughts, some comments, some questions. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, and/or you can put a hand up or type a question in the Needle app, N-E-D-L, at your app store. And if you're listening to us live at live.needle.com/Dr. Michael Ryce, DrMichaelRyce, thank you for being here. Glad to have you. And if you have a comment or a question, you'll need to download the Needle app to be able to access us directly. And if you're one of those people who's downloaded the Needle app and are still having difficulties, please email me. I've had a couple people do that recently, and we've been able to help them understand whatever the technical glitch is, and get them to be reinstated with the active ability to hear the show on the app and or type in a comment or use the phone. So we've got plenty of time for a comment or question. We've got quite a few people on the app listening. How can we support you? What's on your mind? What have you heard in the past few days or weeks, or in the last 14 years on the Mind Shifters Radio, that we might have a discussion about or help clarify for you? I've had almost no direct feedback about us reading the Course of Love with commentary, and I have struggled at times with how many ways the Course of Love refers to love as a verb, and in alignment, trying to keep that in alignment with the message that we give in this work, that love is a noun, it's this energy of creation, it's the stuff you're made of, and to make sure that we help people distill out of a piece of work like the Course of Love the same kind of message that cuts across so many different deep spiritual teachings. It's a lot of extra work for me to be doing the commentary and slowing it down with the Course of Love. And so I'm taking a break from that temporarily, and we'll see if I can't find some of the segments. The first time we started working with the Course of Love, we had people who would call in and say, I just read this paragraph and I can't make sense of it. can you help us with that? And that seemed to work quite well. And with that, and at the same time, we were working with parts of the book, Jesus, My Autobiography, and it just seemed to flow. So if you've got a suggestion about how to make that process work a little bit more smoothly, we're all ears. Give us a call on the Needle app or type a comment. I have a number of different books that I try to get through once a year. One of them is Anthony DeMello's book, Awareness, and I was referring to that earlier this week. And 2 or 3 of Pema Chodron's books, you know, When Things Fall Apart and Start Where You Are. And Alan Cohen's book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy, and Alan Cohen's book, The Tao Made Easy. Both of those, in the most recent iterations of my listening to them, have been on Audible. And last night we listened in the support group to, or we watched and listened to a talk from Guy Finley. And the essence of his talk could be boiled down to the idea that there's no such thing as bad self-knowledge, and that you'll never discover a bad fact about yourself, and that most of the problems you experience in life are self-created, beginning with this idea that you can pretend that what's true isn't true, and or that what isn't true is true or might work out well someday. And with those 4 or 5 statements, you've got the essence of Guy Finley's talk last night. And he took an hour to tell it and had some stories to go with it. But the essence is I forget who he quoted as saying that human beings are the only animal we know of that pretends that it isn't who or what it is, that tries to pretend to be something it isn't. And so the theme of the talk was, again, deeper and deeper levels of self-honesty. And the challenge for each of us who've been raised in this Western culture to work at more and more deep self-honesty. So we have someone trying to call in, and either they hung up or there's a glitch in the app. So if you want to try that again, please do. It was very clear that someone was in the queue and put their hand up, and when I clicked on the phone to admit them, it disappeared. So if it was you and you can type a comment or a question about what happened, we will do our best to facilitate a resolution. Again, to speak directly with us, you can either type in through the Needle app, or you can raise a hand on the Needle app. So whoever you were that just put a hand up, if you would either type a comment about what happened, maybe it was an accidental touch of the screen and you didn't want to talk, or the app kicked you off. And we would appreciate the feedback so we can understand what the challenge is for you. So back to the topic of deeper and deeper self-honesty. Again, I have recommended in the past 2 different books. One is Untamed by Glennon Doyle, and the other one is We Are the Luckiest by Laura McGowan. And one common thread. There are many common threads between those two books, but one common thread is that both of these women talk very clearly about the challenge that they weren't expecting. The challenge of being more and more honest at deeper and deeper levels. And the more they tried to be honest, the more they were pulled up short, realizing, wow, I'm not really being truthful with myself in this way. I keep finding myself telling little white lies or fibs to friends when it's not important and it doesn't really make a difference. And when I try to get myself to, make amends or confess to them what I did, it catches in my throat. It's really, really difficult, as though some part of me is holding a terror about what's going to happen if I admit that I wasn't fully honest in this little thing. And my experience has been that when we begin as individuals to take a look at that, whether I'm working with somebody else or I'm experiencing it directly in my own life, it pays huge dividends to make that confrontation within myself, and then to start to share it with one or two intimate, safe friend relationships. And now as I do that, I experience an expansiveness, I experience a liberty, a sense of freedom and liberty that I didn't have when I was keeping secrets. I didn't have when I was trying to keep up a facade. And it grows easier over time, and yet at any given time I might feel myself pulled up very abruptly and short, thinking, oh, I'll just, tell the truth here. And then it, as I mentioned, it gets stuck in my throat. There's something in me that feels like a terror arising that I have to shut myself down rather than just lay it all out there. Or as Dale Allen Hoffman is so frequently saying, live wide open. And Allende just typed a comment in that said, make sure you're using the latest version of the app from the App Store. There was a new release last week, and he encourages all of us to not be shy. Call in and comment. We'd appreciate it. It makes it far easier for us to know which direction to take the show. I had a session yesterday with somebody that was just only about the fourth session. And so they're brand new to the concept that they are the ones creating their emotions. And they've been introduced to the mental short version of the Reality Management Worksheet and its companion written version that is just simply this. Anytime I recognize that I'm not comfortable, that I don't like how I'm feeling, I can take a breath, call a time out for myself mentally, turn the focus inside, and ask myself, what emotion is this I'm feeling? So I throw an emotion word on it. And then I recognize that every time I'm feeling an emotion that's unpleasant, it'll be because I've been pouring mind energy into a thought that's creating that energy within me that we call an emotion. So the second step is, with another breath, I ask myself, what thought am I using to create this emotion? And I breathe and soften, and the thought comes to me, or I try out a few, and then I decide on one. And then in the third step, I recognize that every time I pour mind energy into a thought that results in my feeling a negative emotional state, that thought is going to contain a goal that's not getting met. So in the third step, I simply take a breath, I identify the goal, and I say, I cancel the thought and I cancel the goal, and I ask to be shown the hidden part of my own mind that's actually creating the upset. And that's the fourth step, to breathe and soften and say, I cancel the thought, I cancel the goal, and I ask to be shown the hidden part of my own mind that's creating this discomfort or upset or negative emotional state. Most of the time, when people do that, if they add to that reciting the forgiveness pattern that's available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website under the educational materials page, they just make a little meditation of it and they say, I cancel the thought, I cancel the goal, I ask to be shown the hidden part of my own mind, I cancel my need to be right, I cancel my need for anyone or anything to change, and I'll ask to be shown the hidden part of my own mind that's actually generating this negative emotional state. Then at least what happens is the emotional intensity decreases. Most of the time. Sometimes people get an insight. Sometimes they'll flash on a conflict they had 6 months ago or 6 years ago or 6 decades ago. And they breathe and soften and they feel less discomfort by simply being willing to cancel the thought, cancel the goal, and ask to be shown, cancel the need to be right. So they're giving up living in the belief that they know what's going on and opening themselves to living in direct observation. And there's a great power in that process. And then the fifth step is to focus on the most loving, safe, happy, peaceful thoughts they have and breathe and soften until they feel more calm or they feel that shift in their heart space. So Linda finally tapped in and let us know that she was waiting to call and got dropped off. So she says she'll download the latest version of the Needle app, and we'll see how that works. And if you're interested in helping us out, you can press the phone icon on your app and see if it lets you speak to us directly. So as I was saying, I was working with a new person yesterday, only about 4 sessions in, and she was getting tremendous benefit just by taking a breath and turning the focus inside, and she skipped all the rest of it. Just taking a breath, holding it at the top, and slowing the exhale down so that it was 4 to 8 times longer than the inhale was transforming her experience of anxiety. And so we began working with expanding to the second and the third and the fourth steps in that Reality Management Worksheet. And we did one of those practices in the session, and she went from a 6 out of 10 level upset down to calm. Now, this is a fairly common experience for people, whether it's on the internet show or in the support group or my individual sessions. The challenge is, will they be willing to repeat that process when they're not in the session? Will they be willing to make it a practice in their lives of living with 100% responsibility, or at least moving toward 100% responsibility for every emotional experience they have, and use the tool and move away from knowing, move away from belief, move away from dogma into questioning and observation, into asking to be shown. And if people are willing to do that over time, my caseload and the support groups are just full of people who've demonstrated that that leads to a highly preferable life experience. and it becomes a set of tools for them, and everybody makes it their own in a certain way, but a set of tools they can start using anywhere in their life. This is exactly what I was talking with Beatrice Birch about earlier this morning, that they teach people how to recognize their emotional states and the energy of frustration when it comes up and the energy of anger and sadness. And they teach people how to stay engaged with those energies. And once people learn those tools and the techniques for dealing with their internal life experience, they can start generalizing it to just about any situation in their life. And that's what we're here to support people in doing. And so if there's a comment or a question, please let us know by typing it into the app, or tap the phone receiver and say hello. Let us know that this is working. We've got about 20 minutes left in our first hour. I will probably start wrapping this show up at about 5 minutes to the hour. Give a little bit of downtime for the app so that Michael and Jeanie can come on more effectively for the second hour. And we'll keep offering. Another offering that's available on the MindShiftersAcademy.org website is a recording of me reciting the forgiveness pattern. So I have a number of people who asked me, would you just record this so that when you're not around, I can hit play and close my eyes and just do a little meditation with Dr. Tim coaching me in the background. So that's available on the educational materials page on the MindShiftersAcademy.org website. Also on that page is a PDF download of the 10 bottom line observations that I offer people in an initial session, and a PDF download of this 5-step reality management mental version of the Reality Management Worksheet. And throughout that website, on different pages, there are audio files that you can download of the Mind Shifters radio show over the years, where for whatever reason somebody said, this is a highlight show, or it was somebody working through start to finish, working through a reality management worksheet. And those are just a little bit easier to access than going through the 14 years of archives on the whyagain.org website. So we're inviting Susan Bingham to talk. Are you there, Susan? Well, if Susan is talking, I can't hear her. So if Susan's talking and somebody else can hear her, please type that in the comments. And we'll just wait another moment or two, hoping that
Dr. Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
All right. I heard a ping and thought I might be on the phone, but then didn't hear anything. Not sure what's going on. Okay.
Did you raise a hand?
I did raise a hand.
All right.
I wasn't going to, but nobody else called in. I know Celinda's been trying to call in, and maybe she will be successful. I had a weird dream last night about a psychiatrist I had seen many, many years ago, and I've talked about her before. She meant a great deal to me, and she's probably, I know she's still alive, she's probably 102 or 3 years old now and living in Maine. Last night I dreamt that I was walking along a road and saw her in a nightgown repairing a window outside a house, which I assumed was hers, and I was carrying a bag of carrots. And I thought, I want to give her a carrot. And so I approached the house, but by the time I got there, she had gone inside. And I took it upon myself to go inside her house uninvited. I didn't even ring a doorbell. Went inside, standing at the bottom of a stairway, and she was at the top. And she came down, still in her nightgown, and she said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm a former client of yours. I wonder if you remember me." And she said, "No, I don't remember you." And I told her a few things we had worked on, and she said, "No, I don't remember you." And then I reminded her that she had come to it literally in real life. She had come to a concert that one of her colleagues was a tenor. He sang, and I was his accompanist, and she came to that recital. And she went through the receiving line afterwards, and I said hello to her, and I introduced her to Tim Bingham, and I hugged her, a very awkward short hug, and that was it. And she said, "No, I don't remember you." And I said, "Okay, well, I wanted to give you a carrot." And I gave her a carrot, and that was the end of the dream. And I'm wondering if you ever do dream analysis.
Yes, yes, I do dream work with people. I help people do their own analysis.
Okay.
And one of the more productive ways, I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to analyze a dream. And in graduate school, one of the highlights was that a Jungian analyst brought in his own dream that he had analyzed with his analyst.
Uh-huh.
And then he had a Jungian analyze the dream, and he had an Adlerian analyze the dream, and he had a Gestaltist analyze the dream.
Oh, wow.
And so we had 4 different analyses of this dream, and they were very different, and yet they all made sense. And the individual who had the dream, the professor, said there was useful stuff for him in each of the 4 analyses. So
cool.
It's not like there's a right or a wrong way to do this.
Oh.
One of my preferences for sharing this with people is to say, write out your dream just like you wrote it, or just like you spoke it to us. But take some lined paper to write it out, and write one line of your dream narrative, and then skip 3 or 4 lines and write another line of the dream narrative, and skip 3 or 4 lines. So you've got plenty of space to write about what's going on. And then when you've written it out as a narrative with plenty of space between the lines, go back and for each significant word in the narrative, do a free association. So when you think about a carrot, what comes to mind?
Sweet, nutritious, healthy, natural, friendly. Okay, that's about it.
And that's what you would write underneath the word carrot.
Okay, cool.
And then when you think about, the window, or you think about this therapist, analyst you had, when you think about, going into somebody's door or going through their door, every significant word, not the a and the and the
You're right, got it. Yeah.
But when you have that and you go through the narrative and you free associate to every significant person and thing, like if there's a word, I went over to the car, what's your association to the word car, etc. Then you fill that in and you do the free association through the dream. Then when you go back and read through the dream with the associations, you're probably going to have a deep understanding of some important message for you from your own mind that's coming through that dream.
That's like a mind shifter almost, or
Exactly.
something.
It's all about tapping into the stuff that's not right there at the surface consciously available for you.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, what's happening when you dream is just your mind is processing. And it's processing just like it does during the day, except it doesn't have what Jung would call the superego active, right? The part of your mind that wouldn't want to snore in somebody's face, or that wouldn't want to pass gas in public, or wouldn't want to pick your nose, is just, that's offline. but your ears are still working and they're connected to your brain, and your eyes are still working and they're connected to your brain, and your brain is in there processing, which is why sometimes we wake up worrying about problems from work, or we wake up with a solution to a problem from work, or we wake up obsessing about some, relationship conflict we have, because our mind is still working even though we're in what we call a sleep state.
Yeah.
And so if there's a way that your mind is still processing things, it's sending you messages, how do you understand what it is? Well, think in terms of the unconscious and the free associations, and you start to map out movements and or meanings that start to make sense in terms of what you've been living with in the last few days or weeks of your life, and or what's coming up that you might be facing. And it is astonishing for a lot of people how beneficial it is to pick up any kind of dream analysis and start working with it. What I tell people is, it's like learning a language. If you learned the language for Latin, you would have a different word for the desk in front of you and the chair you're sitting on and the lamp.
Right.
But it would be the same thing. There's still a desk and a lamp and a chair, and they're still serving the same function in your life.
Yeah.
So if you start to study Jungian dream analysis, in which case every person in the dream represents a certain aspect of you.
Yeah.
So when you dream about your father, it's not you dreaming about your father. It's about you dreaming about the aspects or qualities that you think of with your father that are active in your life, or that you're suppressing so they're not as active. When you dream about your next door neighbor, it's not about your next door neighbor. It's about the aspects or qualities that your mind associates with that person, male or female, strong or weak, angry or kind, etc. So if you start doing that, then you will start dreaming in a way that makes sense. So your mind is learning the language of the dream, so your mind can communicate from the unconscious or the sleep state to the conscious mind.
Wow. Yeah.
If you start analyzing, learning dream analysis from a Freudian perspective, you'll start to dream in a way where the symbols that are recognized in the Freudian framework make sense, and you'll start using those symbols. Your mind will start using them to communicate to your conscious whatever it wants to communicate. The other thing to understand with the dream work is you don't need to panic, because if you don't get an answer, you can't make sense of it, don't worry. If it's an important message that your unconscious is trying to get to your conscious mind, it will come up again and again and again. It's not going anywhere. It's inside your own mind.
Yeah.
The other thing I do with people is I ask them, what did you feel emotionally at the end of this dream? When you woke up, what were you feeling? Were you feeling intellectually curious? Were you feeling angry? Were you feeling scared? Were you feeling a longing? Were you feeling sad?
Are you asking me? Or
I'm just telling you, that's what because when you can identify that, that's a good piece of information about what the message might be. It'll point you in a direction. Now, when you start working with dreams like this, you'll probably start cataloging your dreams as, well, this is an indicator dream, and this is a message dream, and this is a validation dream.
Wow.
Right? So if I've been doing work on my own with reality management worksheets, and I'm trying to get better at not procrastinating or being more honest with myself or being more willing to take a risk, etc. And then I have a dream about, skydiving, and it's a successful skydive. then I take that as a validation dream, that the work I've been doing on being more honest and putting myself out there and taking some risks is taking hold.
Mm-hmm.
If I have that dream and it's a skydiving dream and I wake up from it and I'm terrified because I didn't want to leave the plane and somebody pushed me out and then I was tumbling and I couldn't find the ripcord and I woke up in a panic, then it's a dream to indicate there's some other worksheets I can do about my fear of taking a risk or stepping out or telling the truth. And so you can use your dreams in that way as direct messages from one part of your mind to the other.
Very interesting. Good. I can feel it already. That dream is already sort of laying itself out, telling me things. Yeah, that's good.
And what's the overall emotional context you get from having had that dream now that we've talked about it?
Kind of like a bright sadness. It isn't sad. It's like I learned something really good to learn. I don't know. She didn't even look like herself, the self that I had known. She looked ordinary, but she was vulnerable. She was in a nightgown. Holy mackerel, fixing your window outside in a nightgown. And the fact that she didn't know me, well, that's probably just about right. I didn't expect her to know me. I worked at it. I named some things, and she didn't. And I thought, well, we've both moved on from there. That's all right. I didn't feel devastated. I noticed it. I just noticed it, and I was glad she took the carrot for some reason. I was glad she took something from me. She got something out of it.
Well, and I will guarantee you that in real life, every therapist, every analyst takes something from everyone they deal with. Mm-hmm. And the healthier ones learn and grow and stay more open to the process of growing and learning rather than holding themselves back as the authority figure and the cold, aloof person pretending that they don't have their own issues, etc.
Right.
And so another aspect of this dream for you might simply be that you're slowly, gradually, with peeling off layers, moving into the realization that we're all the same, taking certain people off of pedestals. Mm-hmm. I mean, internally, like in a felt sense within you.
Yeah.
And perhaps growing into the core strength of yourself so that that's not as threatening as it once was as an idea.
That is true, Dr. Tim. That feels very true.
And if you keep playing with that dream and that continues to feel true, then that's the kind of dream that I would call a validation dream. It's validating for you the effectiveness of the work you're doing, the personal work you're doing, however you're doing it, whether you're doing it with just trying to think about things differently, trying to get yourself to act differently, or do reality management worksheets, or do your journaling. This whole thing about reading your old journals is really deep personal work.
Holy mackerel, it is.
Yeah.
What a journey it's been. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And so one of the possibilities for this dream is that the message is a validation for you.
That's a nice idea.
And you might use it as an encouragement for yourself to keep doing what you're doing because it's working.
Oh, thanks. All right. I've been wanting to call her up. There's a landline on white pages, and I thought, no, that's really intrusive. And she's 103. Who knows if there are any marbles left? And I figured she might not remember me. So this dream is very current. but I didn't call her because she's got her life, and that seems like a ridiculous thing to do in another way. But the fact that she's still alive blows my mind.
Well, another listener put in the comments that she loves The Dreamer's Dictionary by Barbara O'Gwyn Condron, Condron. And the offering of insight is that in a dream, a window is a means for awareness. A window enables light to enter a building and provides viewing of what is outside the structure. In the language of the mind, a window symbolizes the means for greater awareness of self. Seek to see the light in your experiences. Transform your consciousness by initiating thoughts and actions that will produce an enlightened frame of mind. And this is an example of what I mentioned earlier. If you get a book like that and you start reading analyses of what this symbol, what this window in the dream might symbolize, then as you continue to dream, whenever your mind wants to send you a message about expansiveness and viewing what's inside or outside of something, growing in awareness of self, it'll start using windows showing up in your dream to communicate that.
Wow.
So it's like you learn this language of this dream work, and it would work the other way, right? If you had a different analysis for window and you read it and it made sense to you, you would start dreaming about how a window means you need to escape and you're in danger. And so if you start reading any kind of a dream structure analysis, your dreams will start to make sense in terms of that particular language of dream analysis.
Oh, cool. Condron, Condron. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Barbara O'Gwyn, O''Guinn, Condron, Condron.
All right. Thanks. Thank the person.
Thank you, Buffy. And thank you, Susan. I'm going to wrap this up, so we've got a couple minutes before the second hour, and Michael and Jeanie don't have to rush quite as much, and the app might have a little downtime, so we don't have glitches. I am going to remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Today's a Friday, so we'll be back on Monday, and Michael and Jeanie should start their second hour in a few minutes. Please look for the notification on your phone or in the Needle app. Blessings.